These animals are not your bedtime story animals. They're not Charlotte's Web by any means.
They are aggressive, they are disgusting, and they will absolutely destroy everything they come in contact with.
Something was killing America's feral hogs, and the discovery shocked biologists. In the summer of 2014, wildlife researcher Dr. John Tomachek deployed a grid of trail cameras deep into hog territory in Blanco County, Texas. Entire sounders, 30-40 animals at a time, had been vanishing from counties where they had dominated for decades.
Antoinette Cameron says it's common to see wildlife in her Tunnel Boulevard neighborhood. But in the 21 years she's lived there, she's never seen a pig.
No traps had been sprung. No hunters had fired a single shot. No carcasses were ever found anywhere. 3 weeks later, Tomachek pulled the footage, sat down at his monitor, and did not move for a very long time. Whatever was on those cameras, something no biologist had ever documented, executing a strategy nobody believed that animal was capable of, had just rewritten everything the wildlife management world thought it knew. Within 48 hours, his team evacuated the entire monitoring site, not for safety, to protect the discovery. What they found out there was about to change the war on America's most destructive invasive species forever. The monster we created. Before we get to what was on that footage, you need to understand what those cameras were pointed at. Because the feral hog crisis in America is not background noise. It is the entire reason that discovery was so world-altering. Feral hogs are not from here. Every single one tearing through American soil descends from a catastrophic mistake made over 500 years ago. In the 16th century, Spanish explorers released domestic pigs along the Gulf coastline, a self-sustaining meat supply for future expeditions. Nobody imagined those pigs would survive the wilderness, breed freely, and push into territory they were never meant to occupy. But they did, and then things got dramatically worse. In the early 1900s, wealthy European sport hunters shipped Eurasian wild boars directly into the American South. And get this, these were not the soft pink farm animals most people picture. These were lean, aggressive, thick-skulled animals forged in the harshest forests of Europe. When domestic pigs escaped their pens and interbred with those imported boars, the result was something nobody planned for. A super hybrid, faster, meaner, harder to kill, and capable of reproducing at a pace that should genuinely alarm you. A single sow drops 2 litters a year, up to 12 piglets per litter. Left unchecked, their population doubles in months, not years. Months. Their spread across the continent has outpaced native deer. Their population growth rivals the catastrophic rabbit explosion that nearly destroyed the Australian ecosystem in the 19th century. According to USDA figures, the country now has approximately 6.9 million feral hogs roaming free. Texas alone holds 2.6 million, present in 253 of the state's 254 counties. Only El Paso has been spared. There is virtually no square mile of Texas without feral hog tracks scarring the ground. Here is what that animal actually is. Their tusks grow past 6 inches. They sprint at 30 miles per hour. They clear 40-inch fences in a single jump and smash through heavy wooden doors like cardboard. Their skin is layered over 1 inch thick, backed by dense fat that makes light ammunition nearly useless. Veteran hunters across the South all say the same thing. Miss the vital spot and the shot means nothing. The hog runs, and it remembers. It learns your traps, your trails, your timing. Every failed attempt makes the next one harder. This is not a pig. This is a biological arms race in a 300-pound body. And if you want to know what this animal does to the land, it invades. Subscribe right now, because the billion-dollar destruction is just the setup. What scientists found actually stopping it will make you question everything you think you know about wildlife management. The billion-dollar destruction. In Irving, Texas, feral hogs ripped up manicured golf courses, tore through expensive residential lawns, and severed underground fiber optic cables, knocking out internet service for entire neighborhoods overnight. At a military airfield in Texas, a group of hogs charged the runway at dawn and forced pilots to abort every scheduled takeoff. Military operations, shut down by pigs, and get this. A farmer in Williamson County lost 24 acres of corn, roughly $40,000 worth of crop, in a single night to a sounder of about 30 hogs. He walked out at sunrise to find nothing but churned mud where his field used to stand. In Brazos County, hogs dug so deep around a cattle ranch that underground water pipes collapsed under the displaced soil. $60,000 in repairs, gone. Texas, A&M University and the National Wildlife Research Center put annual damage for Texas alone at over $500 million. Scale that across the entire United States, and you are looking at $3 billion a year in destruction, climbing every season. Here is the catch. They do not just destroy property, they poison the water. Feral hogs have no sweat glands, so they wallow constantly in swamps and shallow streams, releasing waste directly into the current and churning contaminated soil into waterways communities depend on. In Alabama, streams in hog-dense areas showed bacterial levels 40 times higher than clean zones just miles away. These animals carry over 30 documented diseases, including parasitic worms and bacterial infections, capable of jumping to humans and livestock alike. The CDC has flagged multiple cases of hunters contracting severe infections from handling carcasses without gloves. In one documented case, a hunter developed a brucella infection so severe it required months of aggressive antibiotic treatment. And yes, they attack people. In 2019, a woman in Texas was killed by feral hogs directly outside her own home. They are 6-inch tusked, 300-pound animals that charge anything they perceive as a threat. They do not bluff. Why nobody can simply eat them? The question everyone asks, why not just eat the 7 million free-roaming hogs? Seems obvious. Here is why it is not. 3 reasons, and they are all devastating. First, disease. 1/3 of Texas feral hogs test positive for brucella. Nearly 20% carry pseudorabies. Their parasite loads run 15 times higher than farm-raised pigs. Second, law. Federal regulations ban commercial sale of any meat not processed in approved facilities, making it legally impossible to build a supply chain around wild hog. Third, the meat itself. These animals eat rotting carcasses and garbage. The result is lean, tough meat with a smell most Americans would not get past. In Italy and Germany, wild boar is a celebrated delicacy. In the United States, it is a biological liability nobody wants on their plate. Here is the deal. That combination is exactly why this crisis felt completely unsolvable for so long. Rancher Norman manages over 740 acres in Texas and tried everything. Cage traps, fermented corn bait, hired teams of hunting dogs. Every single time, all he managed to do was push the hogs onto his neighbor's property. A few days later, they came back, smarter and more cautious. Trying to stop a flood with a handheld sponge, he told a researcher. Even hunting dogs were only temporary. Mother hogs would charge and injure the dogs, leaving ranchers with vet bills stacked on top of crop losses. Bruce Leland had spent over 20 years studying feral hog behavior. Standing in a county extension office in central Texas, he said publicly what nobody in the management world had been willing to admit. They simply did not have tools powerful enough to win through conventional means. Catch a few hundred and the survivors breed dozens more by next season. A biological reset button that fires every single breeding cycle. And then something in the brush of Blanco County changed everything. The trail cameras had been running 3 weeks. Tomachek pulled the footage, sat down, and watched the same clip over and over again. What he saw, what those cameras had quietly recorded in the dark, nobody in the field had ever predicted was possible. And it was about to shock biologists across the entire country. The killer revealed. After reviewing the Blanco County footage, Tomachek's team expanded their camera grid across 4 additional counties. They pulled the data, they ran the numbers, and then they went quiet in the way that only happens when researchers see something that breaks their existing model of the world entirely. What those cameras captured was a 30-pound coyote executing a coordinated strike against a species 10 times its own size. Here is what nobody expected. Before 2010, there was virtually zero documentation of coyotes doing anything remotely like this anywhere in the world. Now here is exactly how it works. Pay close attention, because this reads like a nature heist film. Coyotes approach the hog nest exclusively from downwind. Always, no exceptions. They move low through the brush on their bellies, ears barely clearing the grass, listening for every sound. The mother hog, a 300-pound animal armed with 6-inch tusks and a hair-trigger temper, is the only obstacle between them and the piglets, so the coyotes wait. Minutes, sometimes over an hour, perfectly still, perfectly silent. The instant the mother leaves to forage, the strike team activates. One coyote holds position as a lookout. A second moves in and identifies the weakest piglet, smallest, furthest from the center. Then, in a synchronized burst, 3, maybe 4 animals at once, they rush the nest. The strike coyote seizes a piglet with a single bite to the neck. No hesitation, no second attempt, they grab and go. The entire pack vanishes into the tree line in under 5 seconds. By the time the mother hog spins around with tusks lowered, there is nothing left but paw prints in the dirt. But here is where it gets strange. Some groups conducted what the research team called dry runs, mapping the mother's patrol pattern, then retreating without striking. Hours later, they returned from a completely different direction, timing the attack for the precise moment conditions shifted in their favor. They also rotate roles between strikes. The lookout from one raid becomes the striker on the next. This is not instinct. This is learned, rehearsed, tactical behavior. Dr. Michael Bodenuk, the state director for USDA Wildlife Services in Texas, watched the synchronized attack footage in an Austin conference room. Colleagues said his expression moved slowly over about 30 seconds, from flat professional skepticism to something nobody in that room had a clean word for. He later called it one of the most significant behavioral adaptations he had witnessed in over 2 decades in wildlife management. What stopped him was not the attack itself, it was the coordination, the roles, the rotation. The lab evidence made dismissal impossible. At Fort Hood, researchers captured 18 coyotes from hog-dense zones and examined their stomach contents. Nearly a third contained undigested tissue from feral hog piglets. Not scavenged material, but fresh kills with tissue integrity proving predation within hours. In Georgia, wildlife biologist Sarah Cunningham was alone in her lab in Athens close to 10 p.m. when the sample results came up. Piglet DNA in over 30% of coyote waste samples collected across multiple counties. She told colleagues the next morning she had read the numbers 3 times before she moved. Coyotes were not scavenging. They were systematically hunting the next generation of feral hogs at a scale nobody had predicted was possible for a 30-pound predator. The discovery shocked biologists, not as a figure of speech, but as a precise description of what happened in labs and field offices across the South when researchers saw what the data was saying. Nature's secret weapon. Ecologists believe coyotes were forced into this behavioral evolution because humans had systematically reduced their traditional food sources over decades. With small game declining and development pushing into their habitat, the surplus of feral hog piglets became the most available protein source on the landscape. The coyotes did not simply adapt, they specialized. They restructured their daily schedules, shifting from nocturnal hunting to striking at early dawn. And here is what nobody expected about that timing. It is not random. Early dawn is the exact window when mother hogs are most physically exhausted after a full night of rooting. Their reaction time slows, their awareness dulls, their ability to detect an approaching predator drops measurably. The coyotes identified that vulnerability and exploited it with surgical consistency every morning across hog-dense counties in multiple states. The numbers confirmed it was working at massive scale. In Texas, piglet predation by coyotes doubled over the last decade. In parts of Oklahoma and Georgia, feral hog populations dropped by 20%. In sections of East Texas, without a single human bullet fired, over 30% of piglets vanished every breeding season, and nearly all those losses mapped directly onto areas with the highest coyote density. For the first time in decades, something was genuinely slowing the hog explosion across multiple states. It was not costing taxpayers a single dollar. Here is the catch. While nature handed wildlife managers this solution on a silver platter, the government was actively paying to destroy it. The betrayal. From 2017 to 2020, multiple states ran active coyote bounty programs offering up to $75 for every coyote brought in dead. Ranchers lined up, Recreational hunters treated it like a sanctioned weekend sport. Tens of thousands of coyotes were eliminated across the South under the assumption that fewer coyotes meant safer livestock and fewer problems for everyone. Nobody cross-referenced coyote removal rates with feral hog population data. Nobody asked the question that, now, seems painfully obvious. What happens to hog numbers when you eliminate the only predator keeping piglet survival in check? The answer hit like a freight train. In one Texas county, after the coyote population was reduced by over 60%, the feral hog population tripled within 3 years. Tripled. The piglets coyotes would have intercepted, hundreds, potentially thousands per season, survived to adulthood, bred freely, and produced their own massive litters. Farms that had seen declining hog damage for years were suddenly slammed worse than ever. The hog crisis, quietly stabilizing across coyote-dense regions, detonated again everywhere coyotes had been culled. Dr. Marcus Friedman had been tracking the coyote-hog interaction data for years. He was standing at a podium at a regional wildlife conference when he presented the correlation. The room went completely silent. He described it later as one of the most uncomfortable silences he had ever experienced professionally. 30 or 40 wildlife managers sitting still, processing what the numbers meant about decisions they had signed off on. A state official in the front row put his head in his hands and did not lift it for a long time. Friedman told colleagues afterward that watching the bounty programs roll out had felt like watching someone drain the moat while the castle was under siege. Tax dollars, policy support, everyone doing their jobs exactly as instructed, and actively destroying the one thing that was working. That revelation forced a complete strategic overhaul. The old approach had not just failed, it had made everything worse, with a budget attached. The new war. What replaced the failed strategy was technology, coordination, and a fundamentally different understanding of which animals belong on the landscape. Authorities poured resources into what the industry now calls the smart trap revolution. Modern hog traps are equipped with infrared cameras, solar power systems, and wireless connections to smartphone apps. A farmer monitors a live feed from his couch and waits until an entire sounder is inside before pressing one button to drop the gate. This matters because feral hogs are intelligent enough that capturing only half a group teaches survivors to avoid traps permanently, and they communicate that avoidance to other hogs. With smart traps, farmers capture 30 to 40 animals in a single drop, leaving no survivors to spread the warning. Some operations condition the hogs first, leaving doors open for 2 weeks, distributing free corn nightly until the hogs decide the enclosure is safe. They get comfortable. They bring their whole group. Then the farmer closes the gate. A single smart trap costs up to $6,000. Most pay for themselves in one night. When trapping is not enough, Texas deploys helicopter hunting. $4,000 flights covering 400,000 acres, reaching dense swamp terrain ground teams cannot access. A single crew eliminates more hogs in one afternoon than a ground team manages in a month. There is also a growing push toward chemical control. Specialized toxins deployed through heavy-duty feeders only a hog is strong enough to open, keeping deer and birds away from the bait. And get this? Here is what every senior official now acknowledges behind closed doors. None of these tools work alone. You need the traps, you need the helicopters, and you absolutely critically need the coyotes. Texas has shifted to a coordinated multi-county strategy. Synchronized schedules, giving hog populations nowhere to run. In one county, annual crop losses that had reached 600, destroyed acres dropped to nearly zero within 2 growing seasons. Farmers who lived for years under constant financial dread are now expanding operations for the first time in a generation. The hog control industry has grown into a sector worth hundreds of millions of dollars, and the Texas model is being studied by wildlife officials in Australia and New Zealand facing their own invasive species crises. What we should have learned from the beginning. The most powerful lesson from all of this is not about technology. It is about the coyotes. For decades, wildlife management operated on one deeply flawed assumption. If it causes any problem at all, eliminate it. That assumption was applied to coyotes across the American South with aggressive, funded, government-backed consistency. Bounties were paid, populations were gutted. And the biological consequence was that the hog population quietly held in check by an animal someone decided was inconvenient, exploded back with a force that made every previous season look manageable. Nature had spent thousands of years building the exact behavior those trail cameras captured in Blanco County. A 30-pound animal through learned tactical coordination, suppressing the reproduction of a 300-pound invasive species at scale. No research budget designed that. No government program engineered it. The system built it through the one mechanism that operates without human approval: adaptation to necessity. And we paid to destroy it. The disappearance of feral hogs across Texas, Georgia, and Oklahoma was never the mystery officials framed it as. It was a signal, written in coyote tracks and empty hog nests, that the ecosystem was correcting an imbalance human activity had created. Tomachek understood it the moment he watched that footage for the 17th time. The hogs were not vanishing into thin air. Something was hunting them, something that had quietly developed a system no wildlife management agency had budgeted for, trained for, or considered possible. The government paid to destroy the one predator holding the hog crisis in check, which makes you wonder, what else are they paying to destroy right now? Subscribe, because the answer is in the next video. And it is worse than this one. What do you think is the real reason the government still blocks commercial sale of wild hog meat despite a crisis this severe? Drop your answer in the comments. Hit that like button and subscribe now, because the next video uncovers something even the researchers were not prepared to explain.